Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Today we are on location right here on the side of Lake Washington with the Cascades in the background, beautiful kind of cloudy, semi-clear day. We're gonna try and get a nice jib shot here with my girlfriend Tiffany, who's so graciously volunteered to help us out. Thank you. All right, so how today's shot's gonna work is I have my Kessler pocket jib attached to a nice sturdy tripod and a Blackmagic Cinema camera right there with a Canon zoom lens. So a very simple shot. I'm just gonna lift back on the arm and get a nice rising shot, you know, that you've probably seen the shot in opening scenes for movies and whatnot. So let's get started. Just hit record. And here we go. Double check my framing and action. Nice and steady. Very large camera for very small jib. Okay, and bring her back down. Please don't fall off the jib. All right, looks like we got the shot. So let's take it into After Effects and see what we can do. As you can see, I already have my After Effects project open up with the footage I shot with the lovely Tiffany. So it was that footage that I shot overlooking Lake Washington. You can't really see it there from this view, but it is there. So we got a nice clean jib movement here with the Blackmagic Cinema camera. So that looks great. One thing I do want to point out is when I did originally shoot this, so here's the original footage out of the camera. So what happened, because I was using a larger camera than you're supposed to for that particular jib, you're mainly supposed to use like a DSLR, it created a little wobble effect. Whoops, let me go back to that one, original footage. So, as you can see, I'll just play it here. Very large camera for very small jib. All right, and you hear me talking. I'm pointing the fact out already that it is a little wobbly or a little too big. So, when I did bring this into After Effects originally to do a little test and see how it would track, use the 3D camera tracker on that original wobbly footage, and it kind of wreaked havoc in the way that the tracking points actually still held pretty well, but just the footage didn't look really good once it tracked with the sky. So I figured the best thing I can do would be to put a warp stabilizer on it. That's an effect. If you just go to Effects and Presets, type in warp, and then right over here you have warp stabilizer VFX. So I just put warp stabilizer around 30%. Smoothness on there, and turned out a lot smoother footage. So this is much better. So anyway, this is what we're going to use today for this little tutorial. So what the 3D camera tracker will do is it'll read the scene for depth, and it'll create these tracking points, which you'll see in a moment, and they'll be sized according to how far After Effects thinks that plane or object is from the camera. And then that way it can create a 3D camera and can pin items to those tracking points, and if you were moving around in the scene, they would remain at that distance pinned to that spot the whole time. So it's a great way to, you know, put in text that'll kind of just live in that certain spot. You know, so if you're moving towards it, it'll come with the right kind of parallax right towards you, as if it were there in the scene. So it's a really powerful tool, and I've really enjoyed experimenting with it. And so let me go ahead and come over here to Tracker, and you can get that if you don't have that readily available by going to Window and coming down to Tracker and just selecting Tracker. And see, I made it go away, and I'll make it come back. And we'll go ahead over here, and we've got a couple options, but we're going to focus on track camera. So let's go ahead and just fire that off. Just click track camera. And now it's going to analyze the scene. Now it's going to solve the camera. And voila, there we are. Look at how colorful that is. It's just kind of nice to look at, isn't it? So first thing I'm noticing is, okay, we have a lot of tracking points. That's cool. That makes me feel good. And see, what After Effects is doing is it's kind of deleting some that it doesn't think are very good tracking points. So it's already doing some mental math for you. So the tracking points, if we watch the tree, they stay on there pretty good. Some of them are kind of drifting though. Now when I go and if I want to select some of these, it gives me a warning here. So it's showing me no depth from a tripod pan solve. Now looking at this again, you can see that the tracking points are all the same size. Now what I talked about earlier was that it'll read the depth in the scene and it's going to size the tracking points according to how far After Effects thinks that planar object is from the camera that it's creating. So what's going on here is they're all the same size. So it's not reading any depth from the scene, so we have a problem here when I thought we were doing so good. Okay, come over to Effects Controls and let's troubleshoot this. Let's go to Advanced. And then right here we can see the solve method. So method use tripod pan, and if we go back over here, it's saying the tripod pan solve did not work. So let's try something else. I'm going to click auto detect where it says that, and it'll give me a drop down menu, and I'm going to go ahead and select typical. Typical is for like a moving shot. It's the kind of typical scenes that you'll use for the 3D camera tracker. You know, it's always best to use a scene that employs some movement to it so you can see those objects really pinned to the scene. It helps sell it so much better. So let's try that. I'm going to hit typical, and we'll just have to wait a second here. So that has gone ahead and given us a new solve. So let's see here. Now we've got some tracking points on Tiffany's back here, and coming up, kind of recalculating. And then we had a whole bunch here, and they're actually still there. So if you get out your little microscope here, you can kind of see them. Well, no, actually, we can just go over here, back to the effects controls, and select track points. So there we go. Now we can see that we have a lot of tracking points. They're all different sizes. So this looks correct. We've got Tiffany right here who's right in front of the camera, and these tracking points are big. The bushes here, a lot smaller. The tree gets smaller, and way back here in the distance, some of this area back here, a lot smaller. So that looks great. So it's reading a lot of depth to the scene. So we're doing really good. Now, if I come back over here at Effects Controls, I just want to point out it's giving us an average error of 0.31 pixels. And that's really good. Typically you want under 1.00 of an average error, and that will be an indicator that you've got a good track. So we have a really good track, so we're off to a good start. Now, originally when I tried to do this sky replacement, I tracked to the tree, and what happened was it was reading a lot more movement with the tree. The tree is closer, the sky is much further back, so the sky was actually moving too much. So I had to try again with some tracking points that are further away. So you can just zoom in on your scene. I'm going to zoom in a bit here. Alright, so it's got one tracking point on the sky. You know, this tracking point, you know, this one's probably reading the plant here, so I guess we can leave that one. This one isn't really reading anything. It's kind of between those two branches. So what you can actually do to help clean up your track here is you can delete some of the track points that you don't think are very accurate. After Effects tries to do it for you, like I said, but you can edit it yourself if you want to do that. So I'll just delete that, and it quickly resolves the scene, and nothing really happened. Error stayed the same. So anyway, the tracking points I'm kind of interested in are around this school. It's pretty far away. It's obviously, we don't really have any tracking points on the sky except for that, but I'm not going to really trust that. So I'm going to zoom in on the school here and move around a little bit with my hand tool to see what we can grab. So you can grab as many points as you want, really. You'd want to make sure they're all on the same plane. So we got a lot of good ones here. I'm just going to shift click around here really carefully because these are small. I'll grab that one and that one. So I like the 6 of these tracking points, and that's giving us a target kind of on the school there. So I'm going to right click, and you'll have a few options once you right click on that area. You can create text in camera, a solid in camera, a null, which will gather that position information on a null. I'm going to go ahead and select create null and camera. Okay, so that was fast. It's given us a few things down here, and we have a 3D track camera and a track null, which is right where that target was. So it's put that position information on that null right there where we wanted it. And let's stay zoomed in for a second and let's just watch that null. So pretty good. It's staying right on that school right there, and it's not exhibiting too much movement like the tree was, so I think we're safe with that. And I want to show you one other thing to help visualize kind of what's going on with this 3D tracker camera. I'm going to go to the Active Camera tab, and I'm going to go ahead and select Top View and zoom out. So if we look at the camera here, that's our 3D tracker camera, and we can see it's got a whole bunch of tracking information. So it actually does a camera move based on how the scene is moving, so we can kind of watch what's happening there. So the camera's actively moving around, and that is pretty cool. So just something to help visualize kind of what's going on in the background of the 3D camera tracker. So let's go back to Active Camera, back to the scene here, and so now we can get into some nitty-gritty stuff. So I'm going to go over to my Project tab, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in my dark clouds right here. I'm going to go ahead and drop that right above my footage here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and mask out the clouds. So we have a nice chunk of clouds that'll go over our original sky. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this down to about 50% opacity so we can see what we're doing. And I want to kind of bring it in to where I want it. So I kind of want something like that. I'm going to resize it a little bit. Okay, something like that I think is nice. So perfect. So now I want to grab that layer, grab my pen tool, and go ahead and mask this out so we get rid of all that extra junk down there. Alright, just kind of follow the mountain range here. Alright, up here, 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 and there. Okay, and then I can turn the opacity back up. And I'll go ahead and go back to that mask, and I will give it a little feather and maybe move it up a bit. Okay, something like that. Okay, so we have a problem here, and it was something I was thinking about while I was shooting this, but I figured we were there, I'll just shoot it and I'll figure it out later. I'm sure it'll work. So turning off the dark clouds here, there's a tree, and when I turn it back on, okay, so that won't be as easy as pie. So there's a couple ways, traditional ways, that you can do a sky replacement. So one way is if you search over here in the effects for Luma key, it's now obsolete apparently. You can just bring that over to the stable footage, and a lot of times you might want to do a curves adjustment to bump up the whites a little bit, because this key is going to key out luminance, dark or light values. So right now it's set to key out darker. You can go to key out brighter, and we just adjust the threshold here. And you can draw a mask for that key to focus on, but I just want to kind of illustrate something. So I tinkered around with this effect for a while, and I could never regain all the detail on my trees. So looking here, we can see, a lot of the sky is still attached to those tree branches, and I mean, you can play with it, for a while. You can feather stuff. Okay, now it's kind of blurry. It doesn't look that great. So I also found a great tool here, which is Refine Soft Matte, and this one kind of helped give a little detail back, but it still wasn't quite the way I wanted it to be. It was still a little too see-through. This did an okay job, and it'll be a really render-intensive engine on your scene, or effect on your scene. So I searched around YouTube for a little bit, and I found a really simple way around this. So I'm going to get rid of both of these, and I'm going to bring my footage back here. I'm just going to Control S, save it for safety. So over here under mode, you might have to toggle wherever you are right now. So if you go to normal, we have a lot of blending modes here, and you can look up on the After Effects or Creative Cloud Adobe website, and it'll there'll be a page explaining what these all do. But the one I found was in the YouTube video was multiply. So what that does, it replaces the bright values with this image that you're using the blending mode with. So let's go ahead and see what happens. So that's pretty great. Without messing around with any key or anything, we have all the detail in our trees right there, even the little teeny branches, all preserved. So I feel really good about that. Now we can still see some of the original sky here. So what I'll probably do is just do a quick mask on the footage here. So let me go ahead and grab my mask tool, and I'm just gonna create a mask to kind of kill that part of the sky that is still bleeding through. You can see some of the sky up here on those dark clouds. Alright, and we'll go ahead and go from add to subtract. Alright, and I'll give it a little feather. Everybody likes feathers. Cool. Okay. Let's come back over here. So that looks pretty good. Now we also see there is some sky behind the trees here, and we'll get to that in a second, but let's go ahead. We need to focus on what we came here for, because if I play it through, hey, the sky is not tracked to that video. So let's do that next. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select my dark clouds, and I'm going to go over to the parent area here and grab my pick whip here and drag that over to the track null and release. Alright, and now if we toggle back to the other side, we just need to make that cloud layer a 3D layer. Oh no, now it's gone. So it's actually moved it around to where that track null is, and we can see our clouds tracking way down there. So we need to size this up. It's pretty far back in the scene, so we need to make it really big. I'm going to make it about 25,000, I think was the magic number, and we're going to have to rotate it around for a second, so just bear with me. Okay, perfect. So now let's see what's happening now. Go ahead and play it from the beginning. And RAM preview. So now we can see our sky is pinned back in Z space, and it's tracking pretty good. So it's not drifting off the scene anymore. So it's looking like it's almost there. Okay, we still have a few more things to do because the biggest part about a sky replacement is selling the effect. So right now I'm still not really believing it. I can still see some remnant of our blue sky back here, and then there must be a sunset happening where this footage or this picture came from. So we don't really have a sunset going on here, so we'll need to do something about that. Okay, so let's jump into that. I'm going to focus on this tree. I'm going to duplicate my stable footage, and I'm going to hit enter and rename this tree mask. And I'm going to delete that original mask. Okay. Grab my pen tool and we'll just mask out the tree area here. I'll actually grab some of that over here too. Okay, great. And we'll go ahead and just give that some feather too. Feather your bangs. Okay, perfect. And let's go ahead and grab a Lumetri color. I like using Lumetri color just because it's a one-stop shop for everything. Okay, and basic correction, and let's desaturate. Let's get rid of the remnants of that blue sky back there. Okay, so that is about where we want it. Just going to extend that mask a little bit more. Okay, great. That looks pretty good, and we might just darken it up a little bit here. Bring my whites down. It's looking pretty good now. And now I want to go back over here to this area of the clouds and kind of fix those as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put a Lumetri color on our clouds and basic correction and just desaturate the whole thing here. That's good. And I'm also going to just bring the white values down over here as well. Great, so that's looking pretty gloomy now. And you can also see we've got some light coming from the edge of the scene, maybe the original picture where the clouds are starting to come apart. So I might make some fill masks here to fill up those edges of the clouds here. Wow, it just got real dark. I don't think it gets that dark around here, but who knows? Okay, we'll go cloud fill 1 and go over here and delete the mask on this. Go ahead and grab the pen tool and find a nice chunk of cloud where we want to stick over there. That looks good. Go ahead and get into place here. Resize a little bit. And now I want to go ahead and add some feather to that. I'm going to go ahead and take off the Lumetri color on that. Actually, we'll keep it on. Forgot we had the sepia going on over there. So I'll just drop the opacity a little bit so it isn't so dark. Great, so that kind of helps me over there. So I might just duplicate this and throw a little bit up here. Extend that a little bit. Still looking a little too dark. Take those down to 63 or so. A little darker or lighter. Make that one a little lighter. Great, so something like that. So that's looking better. We might have made the area around our trees too dark, so I might take that color correction off after all. So the lighting's a little more even, and feather that mask out a little more. Maybe bring the saturation up just a little bit. Bring the saturation down a little bit. Okay, great. So now let's take a look at our original footage. It's looking a little too bright, evenly lit for this. Dark storm cloud on the horizon. So let's go ahead and select our stable footage, and let's throw a lumetri color on that as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick curves adjustment here. Mainly focus on crushing the blacks a little bit. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. Let's just go ahead and play that from the beginning. So very nice. So you could spend some time refining this, getting it really nice, maybe trying, some different clouds, experimenting, seeing what looks right. Maybe these aren't the perfect perspective for this scene in terms of these clouds. So mainly, you might want to have a couple people look at it, see if they notice anything, out of place in the scene. Otherwise, if they don't, good job. You've just done a really cool, simple VFX shot. So, as I said, it's a really powerful tool. This is just scratching the surface. Thanks so much for tuning in to this tutorial. I hope to bring you many more. And until next time.